Harry stood in a ballroom in New York on Thursday night and told people his father is doing great. Relaxed, cheerful. His kids are growing like weeds, he said. Meghan and the children are happy to be back in California. Warm, easy, the kind of thing you say at a party when everything's fine. And every word of it is designed to make you look at the wrong thing. Because the update Harry gave at the Time 100 Sports Gala, Charles is well, the kids are great, we're glad to be home, is not the story of his UK trip. It's the surface of it, the polished, quotable, harmless surface. The real story of that trip happened somewhere else entirely, in silence, with no cameras, on a small island in the middle of a lake, at a grave. Let me walk you through what actually happened, because the gap between what Harry said in New York and what he did in England tells you everything. Start with the confirmed facts. Last week, Harry brought his entire family to the United Kingdom. Meghan, Archie, 7, and Lilibet, 5. It was the first time Meghan had set foot in Britain in 4 years, since the late Queen's funeral in 2022. Harry attended the Invictus Games countdown in Birmingham. And then, shortly after leaving Birmingham, the family had a private audience with King Charles and Queen Camilla at Highgrove, the King's Gloucestershire home. Officials called it a private family occasion. No photographs were released. First time the grandchildren had seen Charles in years.
That part has been everywhere. Then Harry flew to New York, showed up at a gala, and according to Page 6, was overheard telling other guests the trip went well. His father is doing great, still receiving treatment for the cancer he was diagnosed with in 2024. The kids are growing like weeds. Everyone's happy. Back to California. If that were the whole story, it would be a nice one. Reconciliation, a sick grandfather, healing, home. But here's the detail buried at the bottom of the reporting that reframes the entire visit, the thing almost nobody led with. The family is also rumored to have visited Althorpe. Althorpe, the Spencer family estate, Diana's childhood home, and the place where Diana is buried, on a small island in the middle of an ornamental lake where she's lain since 1997, deliberately placed somewhere the public can't reach and cameras can't follow. It's widely speculated that during this trip, Harry took his wife and his 2 children to Princess Diana's final resting place. Sit with that for a second, because it's enormous, and the health update chatter is doing everything it can to keep you from noticing. Archie and Lilibet never met their grandmother. Diana died 29 years ago, decades before either of them was born. They've grown up in California, an ocean and a continent away from the woman whose loss shaped their father more than anything else in his life.
And on this trip, the first time both children have been in England, Harry appears to have taken them to stand at her grave, to show a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old the island where the grandmother they'll never know is buried. That's not a photo op. There was no photo. That's the opposite of a photo op. That's a man doing the single most private thing a person can do, bringing his children to his mother, in the one place on Earth where he knew nobody could turn it into content. And here's why the location matters so much more than people realize. Because Althorpe isn't neutral ground. Althorpe is the one part of this entire story the Windsors don't control. Diana is not buried at Windsor. She's not in the royal vault at Frogmore. She's not in St. George's Chapel with the kings and queens. Her brother, Charles Spencer, made sure of that. When she died, he brought her home to Althorpe, to Spencerland, and buried her on an island specifically so that no institution, not the palace, not the press, not anyone, could ever manage, curate, or commercialize her resting place. For 29 years, Charles Spencer has been the gatekeeper of Diana's memory, and he has guarded it with a ferocity that has become almost legendary. To understand how deep that goes, you have to go back to the funeral itself, September 1997.
Charles Spencer stood up in Westminster Abbey in front of a congregation that included the entire royal family and a global television audience estimated at more than 2 billion people, one of the largest in human history. And he did something almost nobody in the history of that building has ever done. He used a eulogy as a weapon. He praised his sister's humanity, her warmth, her instinct for the vulnerable. And then he turned in front of the world and effectively challenged the royal family directly, vowing that Diana's blood family would ensure her sons' souls were not simply immersed by duty and tradition. It was, in the plainest terms, a brother standing over his sister's coffin and telling the Windsors, to their faces in front of the planet, that he did not trust them with her children. The crowds outside the Abbey applauded. The applause rolled in through the doors. Inside, the royal family sat and listened. That was the moment Charles Spencer became something more than Diana's brother. He became the one member of this story who was willing to say out loud what a lot of people believed and nobody with a title would utter. And in the decades since, he has never really stopped. He has kept Diana's private diaries sealed, her unseen home movies, her personal letters. For nearly 30 years, he has refused every producer, every network, every offer to unlock the private Diana, the real, unguarded woman that exists in those archives and nowhere else.
When a major Diana documentary was reportedly floated, tied to the 30th anniversary of her death, the man who controls that vault is said to have responded with something close to contempt, because to him, turning his sister's grief into a streaming product is exactly the kind of thing he stood up in that abbey to prevent. That man, that estate, that grave, that's where Harry took Meghan and the children. And now hold the two halves of this trip next to each other, because the contrast is the whole point. On one side, Highgrove, the Windsor side, the reunion with Charles and Camilla, the woman Harry wrote a book begging his father not to marry, the woman he's accused of running a campaign for the crown. A private family occasion, managed, careful, watertight, reportedly requiring Camilla to be slipped in quietly, told no one, driving over in a hurry, followed by a warm, vague, everything's fine update delivered at a gala in New York. On the other side, Althorpe, the Spencer side, Diana's side. No statement, no rumor confirmed, no warm quote at a party. Just a father, silently, taking his mother's grandchildren to her grave, on land the Windsors will never touch. One of those was performance. The other was real. And it's not hard to tell which was which, because the real one is the one Harry didn't talk about in New York. Think about what that says about where Harry's heart actually is in this family.
The Windsor reunion gets the careful official language and the cheerful gala readout. The Spencer visit gets silence, the kind of silence you keep for the things that actually matter to you. Harry will tell a ballroom full of strangers that his dad is doing great. He will not tell them what it was like to stand on that island with his own children. Because one of those is small talk, and the other is the most sacred thing left in his life. And there's a deeper current running underneath all of this, one that's been there since the beginning. Harry has spent years telling the world that the institution destroyed his mother, that the machine that hounded Diana is the same machine he fled to California to escape, that protecting his own wife and children from that machine is the entire reason he left. So when Harry brings those children to England for the first time, and the two things he does are, 1, a carefully managed sit-down with the institution, and 2, an unphotographed pilgrimage to the grave of the woman that institution failed, that's not a coincidence of scheduling. That's a man showing you, in actions rather than words, which side of his own history he actually belongs to. The Windsors get a meeting. Diana gets his children. And here's a contrast that makes it even sharper. Look at how the two families handled Diana's memory. The Windsors have spent nearly 30 years trying to fold Diana carefully into the official story. A portrait here, a respectful mention there, her jewelry redistributed among the current generation, her image managed like every other asset of the crown. Camilla, the woman who was at the center of the collapse of Diana's marriage, now wears pieces of the royal collection to state occasions, occupies the role Diana once held, sits beside the king where Diana once sat. The institution absorbed Diana, smoothed her over, made her manageable. The Spencers did the opposite. They took her home, buried her where no one could reach her, sealed her private life away from the machine, and stood in an abbey telling the world they didn't trust the people who'd absorbed her. Two completely different answers to the same question of how you honor a dead woman. One that curates and commercializes, and one that locks the gate and stands guard. And Harry, on this trip, chose which door to walk his children through. Not the managed one, the locked one. Now, my honest read, and I want to be fair here, the health update itself is probably genuine and genuinely kind. By every account, Harry does want his father to be well, does want some kind of relationship, and doing great from a son about a father with cancer is a good thing, not a cynical thing. I'm not going to twist that into something dark.
The reunion at Highgrove was real, and it mattered, and a 77-year-old man got to see grandchildren he'd been waiting years for. That's good, full stop. But the shape of this trip tells a story that Harry himself would probably never say out loud. He came to England. He did the duty. Invictus, the reunion, the official occasion. He said the right warm things afterward. And then, away from all of it, in the one place no palace and no camera could reach, he took his mother's grandchildren to meet her the only way they ever can. And that, not the gala quote, not the doing great, not the growing like weeds, is the thing he carried home to California. The palace released nothing from Highgrove. The Spencers released nothing from Althorpe. But the two silences aren't the same silence. Highgrove is silent because nobody's sure the reconciliation will hold, because a photograph is a commitment, and nobody in that building is confident enough about what happened to make it. Althorpe is silent because some things are too real to photograph. One silence is strategy. The other is grief. Harry told a room in New York that everyone's doing great. Maybe they are. But the most important thing he did all week, he didn't mention at all. He stood at his mother's grave with the children she never got to meet, on the one patch of English ground the family he left will never own. And then he got on a plane and flew them home, 3,000 miles from the institution, back to the life he built specifically so that his kids would never belong to it. That's not an update about Charles's health. That's an answer to a question nobody asked him out loud. After everything, the book, the interviews, the exile, the war, whose son is he really? And he answered it the way he answers everything that actually matters to him now. Quietly, privately, on Spencerland, and as far from the cameras as he could possibly get. Because in the end, Harry gave two different families two different things on this trip. To the Windsors, he gave a meeting, a photograph they chose not to release, and a polite line at a gala. To his mother, he gave the only thing he had left that the institution could never take, manage, or monetize. He gave her his children.